Welcome to SailPoint's Identity TV, where we help tackle today's biggest identity security challenges with bold, practical insights. Our next session is all about turning audit season from a scramble into a strategic advantage. It's time to ditch the duct tape and build identity security programs that are resilient by design. I'm joined today by the risk practice team from PwC, Matt Cooper, who brings a frontline view of evolving compliance demands, and Mike Maresca, who's helping enterprises build modern identity security foundations. Let's get into it. Mike, auditor expectations have changed dramatically. Faster audits, deeper access reviews, and real-time traceability. What's causing this increased scrutiny, and what are some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in the audit landscape when it comes to identity security?
Yeah, that's a great question, MK. So we're seeing auditor expectations evolve pretty rapidly, and that's due to both greater awareness and increased oversight from bodies like the PCAOB. Auditors are getting smarter about identity systems and are more focused on how these systems actually function. One big shift we're seeing is the demand for much more detailed documentation. Auditors want clear evidence to support how the system was set up, as well as ongoing evidence for all of the lifecycle events that happen in the system, especially when those systems are tied to financial reporting.
Now, Matt, a lot of organizations are still playing defense when it comes to audits. Why do you think that is, and what risks are they taking on by remaining reactive?
Yeah, that's another good question. And I think the reason why organizations are playing more catch up is because they're not really thinking about the controls as part of when they're making changes to their identity systems or thinking about implementing new systems. Oftentimes it's treated as an afterthought and hoping that they'll have the right conversations internally to have the system configured correctly, when in reality I think a lot of these projects lack that expertise of yes, maybe they understand the technology, but they're not bringing together the professionals who understand the technology, understand the controls aspects of it, and where some of the risks could happen, and proactively building into the system, hopefully, controls versus leaving it to the end where you're playing, catch up from a manual detective control perspective.
Yeah. Let's talk about that shift from reactive to proactive. So, Mike, what does a resilient identity security program look like in practice?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a question we get asked pretty often. So a resilient program is really one that's treated as an ongoing strategy, not as a one-off project. Far too often our clients are reactive and thinking about controls after their implementations, which can cause a number of problems from an efficiency standpoint. The resilient programs we see are dynamic and really focused on centralizing identity management while leveraging tools like automation to support audit readiness from the onset. We see organizations using automation to clean up access and detect changes automatically, all of which will make them much more secure and agile in meeting audit demands as they change over time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Now, Matt, how are PwC and SailPoint specifically helping clients embed audit readiness into their identity programs from the very start?
Yeah, I think having a dedicated team thinking about controls as part of these programs is something that a lot of organizations are starting to realize is not a nice to have, but a must have. SailPoint offers so much out there from an automation perspective, from a compliance mitigation perspective, but you need to be thoughtful in the way that you implement these things to make sure that they're going to stand the scrutiny of auditors. And I think having folks that understand those controls and those compliance requirements be part of these programs along the entire program is helpful in terms of making sure you're designing a solution that's optimal and manages risk. I think another part of that is also bringing your auditors along in the process. So whether that's your internal auditors or your external auditors, providing early insight into how the 2B solution is going to work, where the controls are going to be along the process, your focus on how you're automating those controls and how that should change how they audit the system, bringing them and educating them along the way and getting their buy-in early is preferable to when we see clients bring in their auditors in after a go live or after they've really committed to the design and can't go back, because that's when auditors may poke holes or find issues with the design of the controls, and then it's hard to recover from that point.
Totally. There's a better way. So, Mike, what are some practical strategies for de-risking identity programs? Can you give some examples of how automation plays a role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key to de-risking absolutely starts with having an embedded controls workstream in your identity program. And to Matt's point, as part of that program, having the right people at the table with that risk mindset to contribute. Automation can be a key tool within that program to help spot outliers in access, and we see it being used to help identify potential risk across the environments. We've also seen automation help improve control precision and monitor some of the ongoing user lifecycle events to make sure that human error is kept to a minimum, all of which is beneficial and helps to reduce risk.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, I'd like to dive a little deeper, and let's bring this to life. Can you walk us through a real-world example of an organization that went from high audit risk to high resilience by using a more modern approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So one very recent example comes to mind. Matt and I had a large Fortune 500 client that went through their implementation without anyone on the team thinking through what the control impacts of the system would be. The external auditors came in, they performed a pre-implementation assessment, which ultimately failed. And as a result of that failure, the client was unable to roll the platform out across their organization, which had been years in the planning. So to help turn that around, we were able to come in and help them to redesign their controls framework, which involved quite a bit of rework to the platform itself. But that set them up not only to be compliant from today, but also have that framework so that as audit expectations continue to evolve, they can move with them.
Love that. Pretty painful at first, but helping them avoid pain in the future. Now, Matt, let's talk about outcomes. What kinds of outcomes have you seen, not just in terms of compliance, but operational effectiveness or business agility?
Yeah, another good question, MK, because I think that's something that we often hear is, controls need to be in place. It's a compliance initiative. It's an extra effort. Why should my executives care about making sure that we're spending the time up front in embedding these controls in the solution? And the answer is, it's not just helpful from a compliance perspective, but operationally, the ability to automate the end-to-end identity cycle will help your people get onto access to what they need sooner, quicker. It'll help your organization be able to thrive with being able to have people who have access at the right time to the right things to move forward, but doing it at speed and at scale without risking, having audit issues, risking having people have access to things that they shouldn't. In a world where you've automated a lot of your IAM compliance controls, you can move a lot quicker and you'll use a lot less human power to make that whole engine work. You'll also reduce the risk of human error as part of that. And that just doesn't relate in audit issues. It relates in inefficiencies. It relates to people not getting access to what they need to get access to do their job. So there's beyond just compliance, it just makes sense to leverage SailPoint's technology to be able to look at the end-to-end process and find out where you can automate the entire cycle from end to end, but doing it in a compliant way using the tools available to them.
I love that. And I think it's really important to drive home. So if there's one thing to take away from this session, it's that audit readiness isn't a one-time event. It's a continuous advantage throughout the organization. Thank you both, Matt and Mike, for your insights. And to learn more about how SailPoint and PwC can help modernize and fortify your identity program, check out the resources linked below, including our guide to help reduce cybersecurity and regulatory risk with identity security. Thank you.